Welcome to Oxford News This Week. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Julie Hogan. In this week's news, police trying to locate a missing woman, and guess who won the August 2nd primary election?
Stay tuned, learn more about these stories and others. The Oxford News begins right now. Oakland County Sheriff's deputies are searching for a woman missing from the Deerwood Manor group home on Hummer Lake Road since August 5th. Teresa Adams walked away from the home while staff prepared breakfast at 9:30 a.m. Adams is described as a white 63-year-old female, 5 foot 3 inches tall, with blonde hair and hazel eyes. If you have any information as to her whereabouts, contact the Oakland County Sheriff's Office.
Recent primary election results on August 2nd elected 4 new trustees who are destined to take seats on local township boards. All are GOP candidates and all will be unopposed in the January 8th election. This makes them a shoo-in. Addison Township elected trustee newcomers were Joel King and 18-year-old Jacob Newby, who will serve on their board. Incumbents Eric Sent and Linda Gierak were reseated. In Oxford Township, newcomer Marguerite Payne and Elgin Nichols were elected along with incumbent trustees Jack Curtis and Patty Durr. In both Oxford and Addison Townships, supervisor, clerk, and treasurer were all uncontested.
The Oxford Lone Ranger Parade was another huge success. The festivities are in remembrance of Brace Beamer, who for many years was the voice and image of the Lone Ranger on WXYZ radio in Detroit. He lived on a ranch in Oxford Township. You couldn't ask for a nicer day, and the floats were terrific. Again, this year's success was mostly due to the organizational skills of Rod Charles and the festival's parade committee volunteers. Volunteers consisting of local citizens and members of the Oxford Chamber of Commerce, the local Downtown Development Authority, DDA, and let's not forget our Oxford Police and Fire Department personnel who placed signs and made sure the public was safe. Great fun, great job. Can't wait for next year's festival.
Speaking of parade, a couple of special guests showed up. U.S. President Abraham Lincoln and First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln were seen driven by a carriage and driver down Oxford's Main Street. The evening prior to the parade, Lincoln read the president's address at the Indianwood Golf and Country Club in front of a sold-out room of dinner guests. President Lincoln and wife are professional impersonators, Fred and Bonnie Prevey, and they're from Belleville, Michigan.
A vehicle traveling near Hunter's Rill in Oxford Township was pulled over on a minor traffic violation, and there were 2 young male occupants in the car. The driver had no identification, nor did he have a driver's license. The driver gave the officer what he believed was a fictitious name. On a hunch, the officer called in another police car to come to the scene. The arriving officer immediately recognized the young driver from a previous encounter as having a different name and who had an outstanding warrant. When officers confronted the youngster, he bolted from the car and attempted to hide behind a series of neighboring homes. When officers found the young person hiding behind the homes, they returned him to the car. A quick search of the vehicle, police found evidence of marijuana and drug paraphernalia used. As a result, the car was impounded, both male occupants were given citations, and their parents were summoned to pick them up.
An altercation between 2 men resulted in one man being punched in the face and a pistol shot in the air. Oakland County Police searched the area for the suspect who fired the gun. He was found living at the Parkhurst Mobile Park in Oxford Township. The man told police that his now girlfriend and he have been receiving threatening emails and phone messages from her ex-boyfriend. The man told officers he invited the ex to come to his home so they could duke it out. When the ex-boyfriend showed up, the ex was punched in the face and a handgun was fired into the air. The man explained he just wanted to frighten the ex-boyfriend. Guess that would do it. Police retrieved the pistol and ammunition for evidence. Officers contacted the ex-boyfriend, who said he will press charges. Currently, the case remains open.
And a man reported a motorcycle stolen from outside Tom's Hardware on South Lapeer Road in the parking lot. The motorcycle, described as a green Kawasaki, has no battery and is in need of other mechanical repairs. Officers were able to find a video surveillance from the parking lot camera across the street. Upon checking the tape, they saw the suspect load a motorcycle into the back of a pickup and drive away on Minnetonka Drive. If you know of who might have taken the motorcycle, please call the Oxford Police.
An Oakland sheriff's deputy spotted a red car driven by a man the officer recognized as being on an outstanding arrest warrant bulletin. The man's vehicle was pulled over near M24, where the officer asked to see identification. The driver admitted to the officer that he was the man police were looking for. The man was advised of his rights and taken into custody.
When a check issued by a local woman for the purchase of a puppy bounced 4 times, that's when local police were called in. Canine Rescue League in Oxford Township sold a puppy for $240, and when the check was returned for non-sufficient funds, the purchaser told Canine Rescue to resubmit the check. However, each time they submitted the check, it was returned. The final submission resulted in a stamp reading, "Account closed." Police tried to contact the purchaser, but she did not return their calls, and the investigation continues.
That's Oxford News for this week. If you want to learn more about these stories and others, stop by your local store and pick up a copy of the Oxford Leader newspaper. Or better yet, catch us right here on OCTV, Charter 191, and AT&T Channel 99.
And coming up next on OCTV, Oxford Sports with Jamie Hughes, and also catch Oxford School News with John Ochins. And don't miss Auto Talk and Science in the News with Dave Kenny.
I'm Julie Hogan. This is Oxford News This Week, where we bring your news closer to home.
And I'm Elgin Nichols. Remember, always be kind to your friends and neighbors, and thanks for watching.
Your local business.
Your police department.
Your local business.
Your Village of Oxford.
The schools. Your parks and recreation.
Your community.
Your community.
Only on OCTV.
Welcome to Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication New Scientist. In our first story, here comes the sun. The dance of the sunflower reveals a sophisticated ability to exploit its environment. The heads of young sunflower plants follow the sun during the day, then reverse course at night so they're ready to face the dawn. But no one knew how much of an advantage the plants gain from their daily routine, or why they cease to track the sun once they've bloomed. To find out, Stacy Harmer at the University of California, Davis and her colleagues tethered some young plants so they couldn't move and rotated the pots of others so they were facing the wrong way in the morning, away from the sunrise. They found that leaves of the both groups of sunflowers were about 10% smaller than leaves from plants that were allowed to follow the sun. They're less efficient if they can't track, says Harmer. To understand why sunflowers in bloom stopped moving and faced the rising sun, the researchers rotated some sunflowers so they were facing west, then recorded how many bees and other insects visited the plants. The east-facing flowers received about 5 times as many pollinators as the west-facing ones, probably because they were warmer, which attracts pollinators. You can see the bees going crazy over the east-facing flowers and mostly ignoring the west-facing flowers, says Harmer. Smart sunflowers. Well, it's not just the Olympians and other sports superstars. People who do 3 or more hours of exercise a week can have larger hearts too, and may be diagnosed as having a heart condition. Elite athletes are well known to have enlarged hearts, but this is the first time a similar phenomenon has been seen in people who do a moderate amount of exercise. Declan O'Regan at the Imperial College in London and his team made the discovery by scanning 1,096 people who had healthy hearts. They found that on the average, the more exercise they did, the larger the hearts were. Almost half of our subjects who exercised for 5 hours a week or more had enlarged hearts, said O'Regan. A smaller effect was also seen in people who did as little as 3 hours of exercise a week. The left ventricle, which pumps oxygenated blood into the aorta, was 2.4 times more likely to be larger in those who exercise for about 3 to 5 hours a week, while this chamber was 4.4 times more likely to be enlarged in people who exercised even longer. The right ventricle, which pumps deoxygenated blood to the lungs, was also affected by the exercise. This chamber was 1.7 times more likely to be enlarged in people who did 3 to 5 hours exercise a week, and 9.1 times more likely to be bigger in people who did more. Once exercise exceeded 3 hours, we saw a large impact, says O'Regan. He is concerned, though, that these changes to heart shape and size could lead to misdiagnosis for heart conditions. Of those who did 5 hours or more exercise a week, 42% had right ventricles whose dimensions would prompt a doctor to believe a person had developed dilated cardiomyopathy, a progressive heart disease. O'Regan says he knows of some cases where perfectly fit people have been told they have heart problems. The worst impact of this was psychological, causing people much anxiety over their health, he says. We're talking about completely healthy hearts, but the risk is that they get misdiagnosed as diseased. This is a big problem, says Joel Rose of the charity Cardiomyopathy UK. We really welcome this study because it will help reduce misdiagnosis, he says. O'Regan is now calling for physicians to ask their patients how much they exercise before issuing a diagnosis. Even better would be to test a person's stamina, as those with enlarged hearts can easily cope on an exercise bike, while those with diseased hearts would struggle. And in the insect world, honey push-ups might cool the hive. When it's hot, Asian giant honeybees may chill their colonies through synchronized movements that suck cool air into the nest, then push warm air out. To protect their open-air comb, layers of bees form a living insulated cloak called a bee curtain. Gerald Kasperger of the University of Graz in Austria and his colleagues filmed 9 colonies near Chitwan National Park in Nepal with infrared video cameras. The footage revealed small, cool spots on the surface of the bee curtain that appeared and faded within a few minutes and were more numerous during the hottest part of the day. The spots may be areas where cooler air from outside the nest is being drawn into the overheated interior as bees in the innermost layer push their legs against the comb to create a cavity between the curtain and the comb. The cooler nest spots are analogous to our nostrils, says Kasperger. When the bees relax, the curtain would hug the comb again, forcing hot air out. Push up, breathe in, relax, breathe out. At least that's the theory. Well, that's it for this edition of Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television, and we'll be right back.
OCTV brings you some humor to relieve the excitement of local meetings. Watch Elgin and David explain the local politics with Minutes by Minutes, weekdays at 11:30 in the morning and 10:30 in the evening, keeping it local.
I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny. Each week, catch us on Minutes by Minute.
Don't miss it.
Canine Stray Rescue is Oxford's own local dog rescue. Call them at 248-628-0435 or go to their website dogsaver.org and click on the Canine Stray Rescue League link.
Welcome to the Oxford Wildcats School Update. The primary point of discussion at the recent school board meeting was the millage renewal and Headley Hedge defeat. Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations Sam Barna was at the podium and put forth the plan of action.
We obviously did some soul searching, and obviously we made a note of some of the better communication that we're going to do both internally and externally within the district. But in addition to that, we also decided to propose splitting out the proposals into 2 items, of both a renewal of the current non-operating non-homestead millage, as well as a renewal and then a restoration. And so that restoration is basically the incremental amount between the 18 mills and the current 17.8078.
A greater communication effort is the focus.
Going forward, we plan on doing some forums with the community to bring them forward, as well as posting on our website the facts of what the non-homestead millage is and what it is not and what it represents for the district. So basically the facts.
There will also be a greater emphasis on the properties taxed.
Again, what it does is it taxes those properties, as we stated before, which are commercial businesses, industrial businesses, second homes, cottages, and the like.
More about communication.
The communication could have been stronger, granted that. There was also, in our opinion, some confusion on behalf of those who may have voted against it, let's just say. And so because we had the proposal with a Headley hedge last week in one proposal, there was certain constraints, as I had mentioned previously, that of legalese that we could say and what we couldn't say. We technically could not call it a renewal because there was that component of a Headley hedge. There is no Headley hedge within this. It is broken out. In either instance, you cannot levy more than 18 mills against those properties that I previously mentioned. So I want everyone to be aware of this. And I also want everyone to be aware that it does represent, obviously, a little over $5.1 million to the district of operating funds.
Look for our broadcast of the complete meeting later on this station. Oxford Schools recently announced that teacher Guy Cocasetta is now the principal of our Crossroads for Youth school. If you remember, the previous principal was ousted for misuse of school district credit cards last year. I spoke with Cocasetta about his qualifications and background.
Yeah, I was hired in a couple years ago to be a special education teacher. Work with a caseload of about 20 students. Also co-taught. I'm highly qualified in mathematics and social studies. So I co-taught in mathematics and also had direct instruction classes covering mathematics and social studies.
And what on earth inspired you to want to be principal at Crossroads for Youth?
Well, I have a master's degree in educational leadership, specializing in a principalship. I was an assistant principal at Romeo High School for 2 years before coming to Oxford, and I've always one of my talents, one of my greatest skill sets is working with at-risk youth. And when this job opened up, it fit my skill set perfectly, being not only working with at-risk students, but in a leadership role. And having the dual certification of special education as well as ed leadership, it was a perfect fit for me.
I asked him about his goals.
I'm obviously in a new environment, not only as an educator, but as a leader. I'm the only administrator at this building, so my main goal is to keep the doors open and keep the students in the classroom. From a pedagogy type situation, I really want all of my students to be successful, whether it be a diploma track or a GED track, and I want them to enjoy learning and use this as a transitional lily pad, if you want to call it that, to get into whether it be to graduate from here or to get back into a regular education placement so they can continue their education and be productive members of society.
This is truly a unique group of kids, some convicted of minor crimes, some needing foster homes, all sent here by the court.
You have to put yourself in the student's shoes. It's got to be pretty scary for them too.
Sure.
It's just, where am I at now? I'm in the middle of the country. There's a school here. It's a non-traditional school. It's not what they're used to. And then they get, here's your classes, and then all of a sudden they get called a week later to say, okay, you're done here. So it's I think that's what we do best as educators, the people in this building, me as the principal, me as the leaders, is to have those arms open in a welcoming environment. I think that's the most important thing we do, is to not have them shut down, but more embrace this type of environment so they can, whatever next step is in for that particular student, they can thrive on.
I asked him about the range of personalities.
One thing I've always learned is that kids are kids. So every kid's unique, every kid's an individual. So there's going to be, there's introverts, there's extroverts. There's kids with good attitudes, kids with not so good attitudes. Just like in your regular school setting. Mm-hmm. Kids are kids, no matter where you put them.
There will be 40 to 50 kids there. The ratio is around 10 students per teacher. In addition to that, there's a social worker and a school psychologist. That's the Oxford School Update for this week. This is Oxford Community Television, keeping it local.
And back with you on Oxford News this week. Yeah, we are so excited about the upcoming fall sports, but some Olympic reporting coming to you. Olympic roommates Michael Phelps and Ryan Lochte maintain a relaxed vibe at the Athletics Village. There's an ongoing card game in their suite, and Snapchat sessions actually keep them busy between being in the pool. We do tape this prior to the Thursday night showdown in the pool. They'll race against each other for a final time in the 200-meter individual medley, ending a 13-year rivalry that has been one of the greatest in swimming history. The Americans are on top two performers in the competition. Phelps and Lochte have medaled in the 200 IM in the last 3 Olympics. Phelps won each time. Lochte finished second, third, and second. Phelps is finally retiring after these games, where it has already notched him a 20 and 21st gold medal. He will try to become the first swimmer, male or female, to win the same event in the last 4 straight Olympic competitions. Lochte has owned the 200 IM world record for 7 years. Phelps usually comes out on top against him. That's how it went 4 years ago in London. When Phelps won, Lochte finished second. Lochte beat Phelps in the 400 IM on the first day of swimming in London, his most notable victory on the big stage in their rivalry. Lochte turned 32 this past week and is not committed whether Rio will be his last Olympic competition. The clock, though, however, ticking down for Phelps, who races 5 more times before hanging up his suit. He'll be 31 years old. He plans to marry his fiancée after the games and live with their infant son. Regardless of the outcome, the atmosphere back in the room is what they like to call Olympic Village chill. Before Phelps and Lochte go at it in the pool, Katie Ledecky for the females wins and swims in the preliminaries of the 800 freestyle. Her last individual event in Rio, the 19-year-old American is heavily favored to win that competition, where she would give her a sweep in the 200, 400, and 800 freestyle for the first time since back in 1968, when Debbie Myers did that as well. The mark of a great athlete can sometimes be measured outside the field of competition. The measure is not only fouling course, but has an Oxford connection. Not notching gold medals like his counterparts Michael Phelps or Ryan Lochte, one could argue that Kevin Cordes is not reaching his goals that he might have expected down in Rio in this year's Olympic competition. He has, though, made a mark, and he made it here in Oxford, and he made it to the Rio Olympics through disappointment and resiliency. Cordes was honing his skills in the pool back in 2012. He narrowly missed qualifying for the London Games, faltering after leading in the final meters of the U.S. trials in the 100 breaststroke. He was disqualified after removing his goggles that had filled up with water again, and he was disqualified. He knew he had to do something else and find a way to get to the Rio Olympics, and he did maintain that by traveling 9,000 miles from America to train in Singapore. The Oxford connection was Kevin's visit last winter to the Aqua Club here in Oxford, along with Giles Smith and Nim Shapira. In a day of swimming clinics and the way of pool safety, he did acknowledge his training in Singapore and still maintained time to come to a small community. Sometimes being an Olympian comes from doing things outside the venue of competition. Mr. Cordes, Mr. Shapira, and Mr. Smith all won gold last year when the snow fell and the pool opened up on that early Saturday winter morning. Rio might not have been his Olympics with medals. It, however, changed the lives here in Oxford. Look for Kevin Cordes' interview on our Community Access. We are rerunning that again. Kevin Cordes in Rio. I'm sure we're going to see him in 2020 in Tokyo. Keep up with the schedules, local news, and Oxford sports. It's always at your fingertips. Check their website out. It's oxfordathletics.org. It's right there at your fingertips. You'll know all the schedules and also downloadable forms that your athlete will need to know. You make sure to get the physical before taking part in any activity. Also, while you're on the web, check our website out. It's occtv.org. Hit the Programs tab, hit YouTube, and you can watch any one of our programs, anything that we do tape or film on the computer, iPad, or phone. Conventionally, I urge you to stay by Saturday and Sundays between 1 and 6 p.m. We do broadcast our sports. We are looking for a plethora of sports coming up in the fall. A a lot of sports with football and everything that goes along with that. Again, OCCTV.org is our website. That's going to wrap it in sports. And once again, tune in this week, our Community Access, and catch the interview with Kevin Cordes, Nim Shapira, and Giles Smith, the Olympians that stopped by Oxford last winter. Have a great day, everybody. We'll check you again on Oxford Sports.
Do you love local sports? Whether it's Oxford High School or Parks and Rec, you can buy copies of each game. To purchase your copy, call us at 248-628-9658 or give us an email at manager@occtv.org or talk to us at the next game. Hopefully we'll see you there.
Welcome to this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication Automotive News. In our first story, every car marketer wants to attract younger buyers, but few have more work to do than the marketing team for the 2017 Buick LaCrosse. Buick says its current LaCrosse customer base has an average age of 60. Survey data from research firms Auto Pacific Incorporated and Strategic Vision put the average age at around 70. Either way, Buick hopes to persuade some younger people to take a look at its stylish redesigned sedan when the car begins arriving in showrooms this month with loads of connectivity and a sporty ride for a large sedan. The stakes aren't as high as they might have been a few years ago when the LaCrosse routinely was Buick's top-selling nameplate. That distinction now goes to the Encore subcompact crossover, which outsold the big sedan nearly 3-1 over the first 7 months of the year, and an example of how consumers' tastes are gravitating towards versatile SUV-like body style. Still, owners of the current generation LaCrosse are on sale since 2009 love the large sedans. They are committed to that segment, Molly Peck, Buick's marketing director, told reporters last month at a LaCrosse media drive. Peck said Buick hopes to retain about the 350,000 people who now own a current generation LaCrosse, as well as turn the heads of owners of other large sedans such as the Toyota Avalon, Chrysler 300, Lexus ES350, and Lincoln MKS. Buick is betting on interior refinement and sophistication. Ron Arneson, GM Executive Chief Engineer, calls the redesigned LaCrosse the quietest Buick ever. It also features a raised floating console with electronic gear shifter that frees up storage below and massaging seats on the highest trim level. Connectivity features include 4G LTE wireless internet and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which enables features such as Google Maps and hands-free texting. Arneson said the LaCrosse was engineered to be more fun to drive than most large sedans. A 5-link rear suspension is standard, and a high-performance strut front suspension system on higher trims reduces torque steer. Nice car. And in Michigan, the state of Michigan may have a ban on direct sales of Tesla vehicles, but the Michigan Department of Treasury has 339,623 shares worth of $72 million invested in the state retirement funds in Tesla Motors stock, according to a published report. The Detroit News August 11th reported that the state treasury increased its shares of the electric automaker by 224% in the second quarter, buying about $48 million worth of the shares. In an email to the Detroit News, a Treasury spokesman said that all investment decisions are made by a team of portfolio managers that are independent of state regulatory agencies. The report also said that the fund owned 104,821 Tesla shares as of March 30th before it increased its shares. The fund's Tesla stock represents about 0.12% of the state's $60 billion portfolio, the newspaper reported, and Michigan has perhaps been the biggest and most public thorn in Tesla's side as it continues to try to open shop in 5 states that it is barred from. Tesla applied for a Michigan dealership license in November of 2015, about a year after Governor Rick Snyder signed a bill prohibiting the direct sale of vehicles from automakers to consumers. Wow. And in our last story, Chevrolet will go after Volkswagen's diesel customers. There are a lot of diesel intenders and diesel loyal people who are looking for a brand and vehicles to go after, said Dan Nicholson, General Motors Vice President for Global Propulsion Systems. Chevrolet, Nicholson said, will follow through with its plan to launch a new diesel engine for the Chevrolet Cruze. The car is expected to arrive in 2017 and feature a 1.6-liter diesel that is so quiet, engineers call it whisper diesel. Nicholson said, I am very optimistic about the diesel market in the U.S. It has been abandoned by others, and we are happy to step in and be the leader. Frankly, that's what we'd like to do, he says. GM, Nicholson said, is seeing a strong demand for the diesel-powered Chevrolet Colorado and GMC Canyon pickups. We're selling every one we can make, and our sales targets are on track, he said. GM engineered the Chevrolet Cruze's diesel engine at its Turin, Italy Power Engineering Center, and it's expected to develop 136 horsepower and 275 pounds-feet of torque. Well, that's all for this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and as always, may the wind be at your back as you cruise down life's highways. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television, and we'll be right back.